Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. We took the day off yesterday. It was split slates. The GPPs weren't great. Happy Thanksgiving to all the homies up in Canada yesterday. Hope you guys have a lot of leftovers. I like leftover Thanksgiving food more than I like the actual Thanksgiving food. I don't know. Turkey cold the next day is always better than. But anyway, it's nice to be here not having to break down 14 games. Can breathe a little bit. This is a really good slate. There are a bunch of huge GPPs on DK. Don't know what FanDuel has to offer today. 100K to first up top in the spin. It's about 85% full as we speak now. So if you're on the fence, do what you need to do there. But joining me to break it down, Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. Kind of excited for the slate, as you said. Every show that we've done has either been 3 games or 14 games. It's nice to have something in between those extremes. Nice little 8-gamer here tonight. Lots of good spots, lots of good lines to pick from, lots of what I think are undervalued spots. I just want to mention quickly, we're a week into the season. I know people love to look at, expected goal shares and things like that. Basically as soon as they can. I do too. It's still a little early for any real determinations. Like, the general rule of thumb is that you should probably wait 20 games. I think 20 is probably a little bit long. At a bare minimum, I wouldn't read too much into anything for at least 10 games. It's like, Anaheim's on this slate here tonight. We'll talk about Anaheim later. They have a lot of very good underlying numbers in their first couple games, and their first couple games were against Seattle and San Jose. So it's like, maybe Anaheim's better than the bottom of the Western Conference. But, are their numbers going to hold up once they start playing Vegas and Dallas and Colorado and Edmonton and all that? Well, we'll find out here over the next few weeks. So just be careful with the small sample sizes. That's all I'll say. There are useful things, usage, power play roles, who's getting what share of ice time, who's getting empty net situations, like that type of thing. Like, that is useful. I wouldn't lean too heavily into the expected goal share stuff just yet.
Yeah, if there's new lines, I try to at least reserve judgment for at least like 80 to 100 minutes together. Because you look at the Ducks line, you were just talking about the Ducks with Bennett Seneke, right? They've only played 25 minutes together and they have 7.46 expected goals per 60, right? That's not sustainable. It's not saying that they didn't have a great start. They did, but everything's going to, even itself out over the next 75, 150 minutes. So just pump the brakes there. We'll, mention it when it becomes useful. But yeah, fun little slate here tonight. Also, if you didn't know, we did have the monthly deal that at the top of the season that expires tonight. That is, what is it? Promo code CUP. If you use promo code CUP, that'll get you 30% off a monthly NHL monthly package that ends tonight at 11:59 p.m. So if you are on the fence about that, click the link in the chat. Use promo code CUP. They'll get you 30% off. You get top stacks, get projections. You get, Data Central. You have ownership projections, goalie projections, and you get into the Discord where there are a lot of sharp minds, a lot of good talk going on in there. But lots of money to be won here tonight. We should talk about it. Let's get into this slate. First game of the night, we have the Seattle Kraken with a 2.7 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens with a 3.2 total. Montreal going Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky. The greatest of all time, Zach Bolduc, Brendan Gallagher, Kirby Dach. Line A, Evans, Anderson, Demidov, Newhook, Kapanen. Seattle going McCann, Beniers, Eberle, Marchment, Wright, Tolvanen, Schwartz, Stevenson, Winterton. So there's a lot of teams with, mid 3 totals here. Montreal is one of them. Montreal top line here, 18,200, 10.7% top 2 stack, 8% projected ownership. They've actually been getting more minutes than I expected them to at the beginning of the season. Suzuki's been averaging, his normal, almost his normal share of minutes, which is nice. They're priced appropriately here. They are going up against Joey Daccord, a goalie I really do like, but like none of these Seattle lines are really anything special defensively. Seattle's penalty kill last year wasn't very good. They didn't take a ton of penalties, but they had trouble killing them off. I do like Montreal one here. I don't know if I'm going to prioritize them in single entry. If I had one lineup, you have Edmonton on the slate. There's Toronto in a really smash spot. Carolina, the other late game, Ducks Pitt. Dallas has a 3.4 total. There's just a lot and lots of good spots here tonight, but I don't think you need to overlook the Habs here. Dating back probably 3 years, Suzuki Caulfield has been one of the best duos in the league. And that's not hyperbole. The numbers back it up. I don't have them off the top of my head, but they are an excellent duo. Uri Slavkovsky looks healthy. So I do really, really like Montreal one here. You want to ride the Bolduc train? His bandwagon has like 100x since the start of the season. I think, one offing him is fine, but really it's a Montreal one game for me. The Seattle side, listen, Seattle is tough to get right on a great day. They have a 2.7 road total, which is middle of the pack here. There actually are a bunch of high road totals here tonight. So the issue I'm running into, right, is their price relative to like other lines in that range. Like, yeah, the McTavish line is going to be wicked chalk, but they're $700 cheaper than this McCann, Beniers, Eberle line. Like, that would be the line for me. I just, at that price, it's not like you're getting a supreme discount to where like you can fit anything you want. If they were the price of the Wright, Tolvanen, and Marchment line at 12.2, that'd be a different story. But Seattle's more of an MME filler type deal for me. You're running 150 to get into your crunches, to get into your solvers or whatever you're using. I think that's fine. So this is a Montreal one game for me through and through.
Yeah, you mentioned how good the Montreal top line has been offensively. Just to kind of back that up, since the start of the 23-24 season, so 2 seasons plus a few games, 3.71 goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. To put that into perspective, the line of Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, and Brandon Hagel's at 3.74. So basically identical goal scoring numbers for the Tampa top line and the Montreal top line. On the show on Saturday, I said the one thing that concerned me about Montreal was that sometimes when, teams, what are supposed to be good teams, play bad teams, they're playing Chicago, that sometimes the ice time will get throttled, even if it is a close game. That didn't happen. Nick Suzuki played almost 22 minutes against Chicago. The Habs won 3-2, and I think that gives us an indication that maybe the concerns we had about their ice time are kind of overblown, that this is a team that wants to get back to the playoffs, that kind of wants to not necessarily just stay in the mushy middle, but, if not push up to the very top with, your Carolinas or whatever, then maybe in the next tier down with, teams like Toronto or Washington or what have you. So I do think that they're going to get heavy minutes. And the only time that they're not going to get heavy minutes is when it's a blowout in either direction. I really do like Montreal one here. One thing I have noticed so far, that line is playing over 40% of their ice time is coming with Lane Hudson on the blue line behind him. That's not super high, right? Because like we talk about Zach Werenski and Columbus one, like they're at like 55%. Like that's a lot. When JT Miller was still in Vancouver with Quinn Hughes, he'd be over 50% with Quinn Hughes. Like, that's a lot, but they're not evenly dividing the ice time. They're making a point to, not all the time, but when it makes sense, to get Lane Hudson on with that Caulfield, Slafkovsky, Suzuki line. So, they are getting a very good puck moving defenseman on the ice with them. 18,200. I don't mind them. I really don't. Cause I think the only thing that scares me about Seattle is what you mentioned is Joey Daccord. Cause Daccord, Saros, and Shesterkin have probably been the three best goalies in the NHL through the first week. And listen, you're not going to make any determinations about goalies based off 1 week of play, but Daccord has been an excellent goalie over the last 2+ seasons, right? This is just a continuation of what he did last year and what he did the year before. So it is a little bit worrisome going up against Daccord, but I do think Montreal 1 is by far the best offensive line in this game. They're priced at 18,200, so you're going to have to make a decision between them and Pittsburgh and Carolina or whatever. I do think at 8% ownership coming in, with less ownership than, half the ownership that you would have Carolina 1 or something like that. I do think there is reason to play Montreal 1. The depth lines for the Habs, I'm still not completely sold on. I think Bolduc, Gallagher, and Doc are going to be good long-term. They played pretty well together through the first week. Obviously, Bolduc, goal per game pace. You can't really argue with that. He's getting top power play minutes. If you want to do a Doc Bolduc 2-man or Bolduc Gallagher 2-man, something like that, I think that's fine. As for the other lines, they're not getting a lot of ice time. They honestly haven't looked that great. The Demidov, Newhook, Kapanen line reminds me of the Nazar line from Chicago, where it seems like they're kind of getting run over. They're just, every once in a while, they create a turnover and get a 2-on-1 or something, right? So I think for me, it's Montreal 1, maybe the Bolduc, Gallagher, Doc line, 2 out of the 3 guys on that line or something if you want a filler. But Montreal 1 really is my focus. On the Seattle side, I don't know. I'm still not really anywhere near sold on Seattle. You mentioned that there are a lot of lines kind of in that price range that you can play. We'll get to them, but there are lines in Anaheim, Washington, Carolina that I think you can go to. I'm never really super high on Seattle for a number of reasons. Split power play time. They haven't really shown that much high offensive upside. For me, they're more 20 max, certainly 150. Maybe you get some of them in your mix. I should note Chandler Stevenson is getting run over again to start this year. Now, we said we don't read anything into 1 week of play, but he got his ass beat last year too. It's just a complete continuation of what happened last year. So, if you want to do a Marchment right 2-man, stack the Seattle top line in a 20 max, I think that's fine. But for me, I'm more in on the Montreal side. Montreal 1 specifically, I do think a 2-man of Doc Bolduc or something like that makes sense if you're playing expensive players elsewhere.
Yep. Before we move on, we have a $50 super chat from Mark Brandon. Thank you. I'll put it up on the screen. Cheers to another season, boys. Is Connor McDavid a fast skater, and will Mason McTavish score tonight? I can't speak English. Or will Gauthier take 10 shots? Yes. No, I mean, listen, McDavid is the fastest skater in the NHL, or one of them. I don't know if they've actually had a full competition there, but there are some really, really fast skaters. Connor McDavid is definitely up there. Ducks are in a very, very good spot, and we'll talk about them at the end of the show. But yeah, McTavish line has been incredible to start the season. So I don't know if Gauthier is going to take 10 shots, but McTavish scoring and then Gauthier taking a bunch of shots definitely in play. Also, Mark, still waiting to hear your vitamin regimen from your doctor. So if you want to DM that to me, I am pushing 40. Need all the help we can get. But thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, certainly appreciate the support. Thanks for that. I will say about Mason McTavish scoring, I think he's in the top 20 for goals per expected tonight amongst all the players that we have projected. So, top 20 for a slate with 16 teams, that's not that bad. So we do like Anaheim. We'll talk about them later. 10 shots is a lot for Cutter. I think that might be a little bit much. McTavish scoring, I wouldn't say it's more likely than not, but there's a pretty good chance of it happening. I think he's right up there with like Philip Forsberg and Jack Eichel for goal scoring probability tonight.
Yeah, and how awesome was I able to click show and it actually got on the screen? If I did that last season, my computer would have crashed for 41 hours. Clayton giving me some words of encouragement about my tongue right now. I don't know what's going on there. But let's talk about the next game. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.2 total. Heading into Madison Square Garden. There we go again. The Rangers have a 2.8 total. New lines for Edmonton here. They're going McDavid, Draisaitl, Andrew Mangiapane, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jack Roslovic, Matt Savoie, Henrique, Tomasek, Howard. Rangers going Zibanejad, Panarin, Lafreniere, Miller, Cooley, Sheary. So, like, I know the Gavrikov-Fox pairing has gotten off to a little bit of an up and down start, but they're the least of my concerns on this Rangers team. Not that like Zibanejad, Panarin, and Lafreniere are going to be some lockdown defensive unit, but like I would imagine Fox, Gavrikov are going to be absolutely blanketed to McDavid, Draisaitl here tonight. You have Igor Shesterkin behind them. That being said, we've talked about it a bunch. McDavid line is matchup proof. They're 20,200, which is fairly expensive, but their top two stack is double their ownership here tonight. So they have very good positive leverage. They're coming in at 8.4% projected ownership. Mangiapane is a guy who should theoretically stick up there. He has the game for that. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen. But anytime, you can get a Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl line for 20,200, it piques the interest. They're definitely in play for me. There are a couple lines right below them in price in better spots, but like anytime you can get McDavid, Draisaitl under 10% on a medium-sized slate, it raises eyebrows. So I definitely do like Edmonton one here. I don't really have a ton of interest in Edmonton depth. Now, I will say, like, in my lifetime, anytime a former Ranger comes back into Madison Square Garden, they score on the Rangers. So if you want to go bet the Jack Roslovic anytime goal, I think that's the best way to play Jack Roslovic here tonight. I think it's close to plus 500, but that's not financial advice, but you probably should do it. Maybe not, but don't listen to me. But Edmonton won, definitely in play for me. They are my favorite line in this game. On the Rangers side, I am fine with the Rangers top line in MME. Like the more lineups I get to, the more maybe I'll get a little bit of Rangers one. The issue is I'd much rather just go play Montreal one, which is $100 more. Like Zibanejad, Cliffy said it. Panarin makes Zibanejad better, but Zibanejad makes Panarin worse. So, like, what are we even doing there? I think my favorite play for the Rangers is doing like a Miller Cooley two-man and calling it a day because, if Zibanejad is going to go out against McDavid, that means he's also going to go out against Bouchard and Ekholm. And once you get past that, you have JT Miller and Cooley going out against, Nurse and the third pair. So, yeah, they'll run into McDavid from time to time because they play so much. But if I was going to play a Rangers line, it would be Miller and Cooley. That's more MME type deal. Edmonton one, I would consider in all formats.
Yeah. Well, I'll start on the Edmonton side. I do think there's only one line worth playing. I'm interested to see how Roslovic works out because I still don't think RNH is the guy he was a couple of years ago. I think he's on a steady decline. Maybe that's why they picked up Roslovic is because they realized they needed that extra scoring punch.
And he's fast too.
In the middle six. Yeah. But yeah, it's about the top line. I'm interested to see how Mangiapane works there because when Mangiapane was having good seasons in Calgary, if you look at some of the tracking data from all three zones, Calgary was playing a lot off the rush. And if you look at Washington last year, if you look at Calgary a couple years ago, Mangiapane's last season there, those teams were playing more off the cycle than the Calgary teams of 3 and 4 years ago. And obviously, McDavid and Draisaitl are like playoff the rush supreme type players. So I do wonder if it's not a good fit for Mangiapane in that sense. We're going to find out. Like, Mangiapane is the type of player where I don't think he does a lot of things well. I don't think he's great at anything.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's all you kind of need. You just need to not be a black hole, and you can find success. So I do think there's a chance he succeeds there. My thing with Edmonton 1 is kind of the same thing as it was with Montreal 1. Is like, you're going up against Igor here, right? Igor's been probably the best goalie in the NHL this season. You know, if you want to say Saros, then sure, whatever. But, you know, Igor's one of the best in the league. He can steal a game on any given night. You know, Edmonton, the top line has been generating a lot. They just haven't been finishing. And that was actually kind of a problem last year. Like, Edmonton wasn't a great 5-on-5 scoring team last year. Even the top line, like, you know, Zach Hyman struggled at times on the top line. That's why he was moved to the second and third line later in the season. You know, Draisaitl and Podkolzin didn't really score that well. So, like, you know, they're going to score more than they have been over the last week. How much more, I think, is the question. At 20,200, like, you know, there are always you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, if you can get a McDavid Draisaitl line for around 20K, it feels like a good bet to make. So I don't have any problem playing Edmonton in that sense. I just think, like, this is a night where there are a bunch of lines in that 18 to 20K range that I think are very playable. So it's not like I think you have to run out and play Edmonton. But if you do want to spend the extra money on them over like Carolina or Pittsburgh or Montreal or something like that, like, I think is perfectly fine. And like you said, the Gavrikov-Fox pairing hasn't been off to a good start. Now, I expect that they'll turn it around. Like, I don't think that they're going to be as bad as they've been in the first week. But, you know, if they don't, this could be, if it takes them a couple weeks to gel chemistry-wise, or a month or something like that, now would be a good time to take advantage of that. So I do think there are a lot of reasons to play Edmonton 1, but they're not at the top of my priority list necessarily. On the Rangers side, like, obviously it's Panarin, Zibanejad, Lafreniere, just because of the correlation. But at 18,100, like, do I want to play a line centered by Mika Zibanejad in the year 2025 at 18,100 against the Oilers, who I think will be pretty good defensively? It's just the goaltending. It's kind of like the opposite problem of the Rangers, where I think the Rangers will kind of suspect defensively with, you know, probably league best goaltending, where Edmonton will probably be pretty good defensively, but with also league worst goaltending. You know what I mean? So Rangers only need like 20 shots to put up like 4 goals on whoever's in net. I think it's Skinner's getting the start. So I'm not super jazzed about the Rangers, just because at 18,100, like, I think you can go play Pittsburgh, go play Carolina, go play Montreal. So I guess I'm kind of out on New York here. For me, this game is about Edmonton 1. If you want to play the Rangers in your 20 max or something like that, like, I think it's fine. But for me, in this kind of situation, I just think there are just other lines in that price range I'd rather go to.
Before we move on, another super chat from Mark Brandon. Bring it up on the screen here. Give Papa a proper coffee and a copper cup. Are the Utah defensemen woolly? I have over 60 minutes for today's show. I've never had a sip of coffee in my life. Feel free to roast me, pun intended, on that. But, Sean Durzi got hurt. He's out for a while. That hurts. Marino's going to need to step up. But Sean Durzi, arguably their best defensive defenseman.
Yeah, and I think as it was, Mikhail Sergachev was already playing 25 minutes a game. So, like, how much more is he going to have to – is he going to be playing, like, Zach Werenski in the second half of last season type minutes, like 27 minutes a game or something like that? I mean, we'll see what happens. I that's not good for Utah. They got, when they traded Michael Kesselring, they have rookies trying to fill in on the blue line. Losing Durzi hurts. I think it'll help Sergachev's fantasy numbers just because he's going to have to play a ton of minutes now. But thanks a lot, Mark, for the super chat. We certainly appreciate the support. We're Utah Mammoth fans here, so hopefully it doesn't hurt them too much.
Yeah. Energy drinks, but no coffee is psychotic. Yes, my doctor would agree with you. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Nashville. I was going to say the Hurricanes, but they are the Predators. With a 2.8 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.6 total. Both of these teams played last night, so the goaltender matchup is Caden Primo against Justice Anuin. That's fun. Not really. Toronto going Matthews, Nyes, Easton, Cowan, Nylander, Tavares, Michelli. Nashville going Forsberg, O'Reilly, Kemmel, Marchessault, Bunting, Halla, Stamkos, Evangelista, Svechkov. We'll have to see if Brady Martin comes back into the lineup here tonight. We won't really know until warmups.
Yeah, I think Stamkos played most of the second half of the game yesterday on the top line too. Like maybe he just goes to the top line.
They've been doing that though. Even when they had the lead, they moved.
Yeah, it's something to pay attention to for warmup anyway.
Yeah, so this game there's heavy ownership here on the Leafs top line because they're 16,300. They had a good game yesterday. Matthews and Nyes both played close to 23 minutes. Nyes had a goal and assist. Matthews had an assist and 8 shots on goal. Easton Cowan, who's 2,600, played 14 minutes and change. No UC Saros here is the big one. Back-to-back, but they are home. Like, at that price, I don't really mind that ownership at 18%. Like it's a Matthews line at 16K when you get 2 guys on the top power play unit. When Nashville's, well, they had plenty of issues last year, but one of their biggest issues was on the penalty kill, especially when Saros was out because Saros was saving their tails. Justice Anuin was so bad for Colorado last year that they just like, get out. See ya. Adios, amigo. And he's still a backup here. So like he had a brutal season last year. He's a little bit better after he came to Nashville, but still bad. I think like it's a power play stack for me. And I know like people just like their shiny new toys like Bennett Seneke and Easton Cowan at that price. And if you're trying to jam in, 2 lines to get, you need Easton Cowan and that's fine. But for me, I'd leave off Cowan, add Nylander and get an more expensive Toronto stack and it'll be more unique, get you on a nice unique path in large field tournaments. So for me, it's a Toronto power play stack. I'm fine with Toronto 1 if you're trying to, jam in some lines. On the Nashville side, Caden Primo was awful last year. Do I have a ton of confidence in Nashville here? Not really. But the Toronto penalty kill is also pretty bad. So like I don't even mind doing something like O'Reilly, Forsberg, Yossi. I probably reserve that for 20 max or so. They have the 3rd lowest road total, but it's like Toronto doesn't look great to start the season. I mean, Stolarz has been fine, but now Caden Primo and net. So I think there is some reason to getting some of this low-owned Nashville, especially in MME. I don't know if I can prioritize them in single entry. I'd never say no to a Forsberg one-off, but I do some sort of like power play stack in MME. Like this game feels like no matter what you do, it's going to light your hair on fire. So like whether you play it, whether you fade it, you're just going to be sitting on the edge of your seat for it. But I think Toronto power play stack is my favorite way to attack this game.
Yeah. Last year, the Leafs were 17th in the league by even strength shots against per minute. Like this was not a great defensive team. It's interesting that Caden Primo starting. Once upon a time, Montreal had 3 goalies. It was Sam Montembeault, Jake Allen, and Caden Primo. And Caden Primo ended up being the one shipped out of the organization. Now, Jake Allen eventually went to New Jersey, and they gave the number 1 starting job to Montembeault. But, Caden Primo was shipped out, and then he went to Carolina this year on a tryout basis, and Carolina got rid of him. Maybe they want him now with Kochetkov hurt, but and now he's in Toronto. Like Caden Primo is not a good goalie. Neither is Justice Anuin. Like they're not awful. Like there are awful backup goalies. Like Alex Nedeljkovic, Dan Vladar, like those are like the bottom of the league. These guys are like the next tier above. So not the worst of the worst, but definitely below average, even for backups. So neither of these goalies are very good. So I kind of agree with you on that Nashville top line. Like at 15,400, if Kemel's there, I mean, maybe Stamkos is there, and then it's a different story. But at 15,400, you can play them with your Pittsburgh or your Carolina or your Montreal or whomever, or your Rangers. You can fit them in with them. And again, Toronto's was not a great defensive team last year. This year, they really don't look that great. Like the Toronto penalty kill last year was not very good either. Last year, the Leafs were 22nd by goals against when down a man. This is not a team that had a very good penalty kill last year. This year they're doing a little bit better, but again, it's only been a week. So Nashville's power play was the one strength of the team last year, is the one thing that really found a lot of success. So like, I honestly don't hate going to Nashville 1, like Forsberg, O'Reilly, X. Kemmel, I think can be a good player. We'll see if they put him there. Putting Stamkos there would make a difference. It's an extra $1,800. All of a sudden you're getting into the 17,000 and change. Then it's tougher to fit with your Montreals or whatever. Then you're starting to double punt your defenseman and all that. You can still do it, but it's a little bit different. But Kemmel's like, if he reaches his peak, he's like a fast goal scorer. You know what I mean? He's like that kind of like a Yuri Kulik in Buffalo. Like he could be kind of like that, even though Kulik's had a bad start to his own season. So like, he's not like a nothing player. And like, I'm not worried about any of the matchups coming back from the Toronto side. And I'm certainly not worried about their goaltending. So I do like Nashville 1 here. I think Nashville 3 is even in kind of in play here. Bunting, Marchessault, Holla. Like, I'm not big fans of them. I'm also not big fans of the Toronto depth. What I mean, like, I'm not super concerned about going up against like, Max Domi and Nick Robertson and these guys. So, if you need a filler, I think Nashville's 3 is fine, but I really don't mind the matchup for Nashville 1 here. But I'm going to be honest, like Toronto 1, I think is the one catching my eye because, that Toronto top line, 18%, it is high. I think you can take out Cowan and put in Nylander or Tavares or something like that if you want. Or just doing Matthews nice 2-man. But, I thought Cowan looked good in that game yesterday. He certainly didn't look out of place playing on that top line. Matthews, he's getting good shots off. He's getting good looks. It's one of those things, like we see it all the time with Matthews where he'll go like 3 or 4 games without a goal. And all of a sudden he scores like 7 goals in 4 games. And you kind of forget that he ever went through like a little drought. And, Nashville without Saros and net, I think is a completely different team. So I think both top lines are definitely in play here for me tonight. If you want to drop down to Toronto 2 because they have half the ownership, I think that's fine. I will say, I don't think that I've watched 2 of the Toronto games. Again, I'm not going to read a whole lot into 1 week, but I think that line last year was kind of overinflated by shooting percentage, and they haven't looked good in the couple games that I've watched of them so far this year. So I think for me, this is a game where I'm looking at both top lines, maybe Nashville 3, if you're playing a bunch of lineups and you're looking for a true filler stack.
Tampa Bay Lightning, they 3 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3 total. Pierre-Luc Dubois out for Washington. Washington's going Ovechkin, Strome, Beauvillier, Wilson, Protas, McMichael, Leonard, LaPerriere, Milano. Only mentioning that because Sonny Milano is power play 1 here. Tampa going Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Gensel, Cirelli, Goncalves, Bjorkstrand, Gord, Pontus, Holmberg. We meet again, Pontus. I understand why John Cooper is doing this. It's just annoying for DFS. He wants to run Point, Kucherov, Gensel as much as he can. The problem is they suck defensively. Like they go through these stretches where they get run over and they need to break them up. And then they break up Cirelli and Hagel. And then like it works kind of, but not as good. And then they go back to it. It would be Point, Kucherov, Hagel for me at 20,800. It's just the price, right? you can get Edmonton 1 for less. You can get Pitt. You can get Carolina. And I just have that feeling in the back of my head. At some point, if they're losing, Gensel's going to go back up there. So it's just like, So I don't particularly want to play them in single entry. Obviously, in MME, you have your ways of doing these things. They do have a 16.9% top 2 stack, which is very, very good. 5.2% projected ownership, highest positive leverage on the board, I believe. But, at some point, if it's a relatively close game, I just feel like Gensel is going to move back up, and they're going to go back and like double shift Kucherov and all that stuff. So it would be Tampa 1 for me. I don't mind, Gord Bjorkstrand as a 2-man. But another thing, like Washington at home, they're going to send out that Nick Dowd line, and you can say whatever you want about Nick Dowd offensively. They've still been very, very good defensively, kind of one of the more underrated lines at home to go out against top comp. But, at 5% ownership for a Kucherov line is perfectly acceptable here. But, I don't mind a Gord Bjorkstrand 2-man here. I just worry about these lines sticking. On the Washington side, like I think it would be McMichael, Wilson, Protas for me. Like I know Beauvillier has looked pretty good up on that top line, but I want to save the $1,900 here. Ovechkin will play the full 2 minutes on the power play if he's fresh. I just don't particularly love this matchup. I don't really like stacking Washington. I've made that known over the years, but like McMichael with Wilson was very, very good last year. Protas had an unbelievable season last year. But again, like there are those regression concerns. But at 14.5, I don't mind taking a couple stabs. You want a one-off Milano as a super cheap one-off for top power play time, fine. But like this is one of these games where I'm looking for mostly MME plays.
Yeah, I'll start on the Washington side. Like I'm out on Ovechkin, Strome, Beauvillier, and the reason is what you mentioned about how Washington runs their lines when they're at home. Like the Dowd line and the Michael line they're gonna get the shutdown matchup of Kucherov and Point. I think the reason why you're seeing Hagel on that top line is because Kucherov and Point have been getting steamrolled this year, and all the production they've been getting has been with the power play. So, that's great for fantasy. Like if they're scoring 2 goals a game on the power play, then great. But they are getting run over at 5-on-5, which is why I think you're seeing Brandon Hagel up there. Either way, if they don't turn their play around, then all of a sudden it's a great matchup for Wilson, Protas, and McMichael. Protas has looked great. Like, just honestly, like, I do think he's obviously still due for a bit of regression from that shooting percentage from last year. But if he gets a lot more ice time, then that could kind of help offset it. Tom Wilson's getting a lot of minutes. I think Protas and Wilson are first and second by even strength ice time per game on this team. So like that line is basically their first line, and they're also going to get the best matchup. And that means like Strome and Ovechkin, they're going to go up against Anthony Cirelli. They're going to go up against Gordon Bjorkstrand, which is another bad matchup defensively, I think. So I think Washington's going to end up putting Ovechkin and Strome in a bad matchup, and it's going to put Wilson and Protas and McMichael in a much better one. 14,500 and only 7% ownership, 4.1% top 2 stack. It's Wilson, Protas, and McMichael for me. That line has looked great. A lot of it has been with Pierre-Luc Dubois, so we'll see how they do without him. But it's kind of hard to complain with how good Protas has looked so far this year. Like I think he's been Washington's best player. He has 10 shots in 3 games. He's averaging 19 minutes a game. That's even without top power play time. He's kind of like the Brandon Hagel of the Washington Capitals. And I'm not saying he's going to put up 90 points this season. He could put up 75, something like that. So like, I do like Wilson, Protas, and McMichael here tonight. That's the only line I like from the Washington side. On the Tampa side, like 20,800, I'll just go play Edmonton. That's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. Like you're not getting that much of an ownership save. You're not even getting perfect correlation on the power play. Hagel's not on power play 1. Like you said, they at any point they could move Hagel back off and put Gensel back up there. So if I'm going to pay over 20K for a line, like I'll just go play Edmonton. That's just kind of the way I look at it. Of anything in this game, it's probably Bjorkstrand and Gord and Holmberg, honestly, because they're at 9,200. They're priced as a filler line. Bjorkstrand's on the top power play unit. Gord and Bjorkstrand, they played reasonably well when they were in Seattle. Brief time last year with Tampa Bay, 2.3 expected goals against, 2.1 actual goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, 52% expected goal share. They're carrying the play. They're great defensively. They're going to avoid, that McMichael Wilson protest line probably all night. So I do think they get some decent 5-on-5 matchups. So decent 5-on-5 matchups, priced under 10K. Bjorkstrand's on the top power play unit. I do think that Tampa 3 line makes for a nice super cheap filler. Like if you're playing like Edmonton 1 plus Bouchard or something, you need a 10K line. I think Tampa 3 is it. I think that's where my interest is on the Tampa side. Otherwise, this game for me is about the McMichael protest Wilson line.
Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.3 total. Heading into Calgary, the Flames have a 2.7. Vegas going Eichel, Marner, Barbashev, Dorofeyev, Hurdle, Saad, Stone, Carlson, Smith. Calgary going Kadri, Coronado, Greedon, Frost, Sharangovich, Farabee, and Backlund, Coleman, Hanzek. I know Huberdeau practiced. He's not playing tonight. I had a good chuckle this morning. I saw a tweet floating around about Marner. It was like, now that Marner's away from the Leafs, Matthews is struggling to score, and all of a sudden Dorofeyev is becoming a sniper on the power play because of Marner's passing. I went and looked. On the 5 Dorofeyev goals, Marner has assisted on 0 of them. So I don't know what just trying to tilt Leafs fans. I'm here for that. But yeah, this is an interesting game. Outside of Carolina, where they have a 3.9 road total, Vegas has the largest road total on the board. Generally, I think, Calgary is pretty good 5-on-5 defensively. Like they're not awful. They're not great, but they're not awful. Where they struggle is on the penalty kill. Now, Dustin Wolf is another goalie that I do think is really, really good, but Vegas's power play has also been really, really good. So it's just a question of, what you want to do, because Eichel, Marner, Barbashev, 18,700. You're kind of getting into that tweener range. Like you have Montreal right below them, then you have Pitt and Carolina and Edmonton above them. So I think they're kind of in no man's land. I think, they're going to be overlooked in terms of ownership. And if you look in our top stacks, they're getting projected at 2.9% ownership. I don't mind them here. If you want to make it a power play stack and go like Dorofeyev instead of Barbashev, then you're looking at 20,900-ish. It's really expensive, but I think it's an interesting way to get super low owned power play combo. If you want to just straight up stack Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Saad, I think that's fine. They're only getting 8.4% projected ownership. That's a little bit high for a line that price, but any decent line in that price range generally sees, some ownership. I think, you can add Stone into a stack if you want. I don't particularly love the 5-on-5 matchup, so it would be the power play guys that I do focus on. So whether you go like Eichel, Marner, Dorofeyev, or Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Stone, something like that. I don't know if I'm going to get there in single entry. There's other stuff I like better. But Vegas is kind of priced in that range where people are just going to go up or down, and they're not even going to concentrate on Vegas. I think, Vegas one is a sneaky GPP play here tonight. On the Calgary side, the price is just tough for the matchup, right? That Kadri line is 17,400 even with Greed in there. That's just too expensive for my taste on this slate. I think if anything, I'd go to Backlund, Coleman, Hanzek at 11.9. But again, I think this is a tough matchup for Calgary, and it would just, if they got into my 150 portfolio, I'd leave them, but I'm not running out to play Flames here tonight.
Yeah, Kadri and Coronado is probably where my interest would be on the Calgary side, just because they're the shooters, right? Kadri has 15 shot attempts in 3 games. Coronado has 22. Kadri's averaging over 21 minutes a game. Like, they're getting minutes, they're shooting. I don't think you can really say that about the rest of the lineup so far this season. And I'm going to be honest, like we talked about this last year, how Calgary is one of those teams that just doesn't generate a lot of quality. It's not like Jonathan Huberdeau is the Jonathan Huberdeau of 5 years ago, but he's still their best playmaker. And you know what I mean? So, like, not having him in the lineup and all of a sudden you're playing Matt Greden and, Samuel Honzik in your top 9. I do think that makes a difference. Like, if anything, it'd be Kadri, Coronado, Graydon, but like, honestly, I think that's a 150 play for me. Like, single entry, like, I'm just kind of out on Calgary here tonight, at least for their forwards. On the Vegas side, you mentioned the Calgary power play or penalty kill. Last year, they're 19th by goals against per 60 minutes when they're down a man. This year, they're 19th by expected goals against when they're down a man. So, like, they're basically right in line with being a below average penalty killing team. Again, we know how good this Vegas power play has been. I do think Vegas is in for a little bit of a regression here. Like, they're not going to be a 30% power play team all season, obviously. But the fact that, they're keeping the power play unit together, if you want to take off like Barbashev and put on Dorofeev or something like that, I think that's more than fine. Put on, Hurdle, like one of those things, like, just because I do think this is a good power play matchup for Vegas. Vegas is drawn 13 power play opportunities in 3 games. That's kind of unusual for them. They didn't draw a ton of power plays last year. But again, we said in, I think, the first show of the season, like, projecting power plays from season to season is one of the hardest things to do, just because they do vary so wildly year to year. So maybe they do end up a top 10 team by power play opportunities per game. We just won't know until the end of the season. But with the way it's clicking right now and with a good matchup against Calgary, I agree with you on Vegas 1. And again, if you want to take out Barbashev and put in Dorofeev, take out Barbashev, put in Hurdle, something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. But it's the Vegas power play guys that I'm interested in this game. If you want to dip down to Stone, Carlson, and Smith, I think that's okay, but they're really not getting a ton of ice time. And if Vegas fills the net on the power play, I do think you want as many pieces as possible. So for me, this is a Vegas 1 game. I do think Vegas has like 3 playable lines. You can also do like a Vegas power play stack of some sort. Those are all in play. But for me, it's Vegas 1 and nothing from the Calgary side.
Minnesota Wild with a 2.6 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 3.4. Minnesota back-to-back on the road. They also have the lowest road total here tonight at 2.6. They scored like 612 power play goals last night. And they're, just under 50% on the power play so far this season. Think they're 8 for 17?
Yeah.
That's disgusting. But this is a much tougher matchup. Kirill Kaprizov, Boldy, Rossi, Eriksson, Ek, Tarasenko, Marcus Johansson, Dallas going Rantanen, Hintz, Steele, Johnston, Robertson, Bork. Just because someone said I wouldn't do it, Duchesne, Sagan, Ritz, Calvin. Anyway, don't really want to play Ritz Calvin here tonight, but we'll talk about it. This is a tough spot for the Wild. And it's not like they've always been an elite 5-on-5 team. They're still doing all their damage on the power play here to start the season. This is a really tough 5-on-5 matchup. Haskin and Harley are healthy. You have the Labushkins of the world only playing 12 minutes. Dumba is selling hot dogs.
Yeah, and I think Labushkin scratched tonight, and they're bringing in Petrovic, and
he's better. Somehow.
Listen, Petrovic Michel was a really good third pair for Dallas in the playoffs last year. Now, that's just one playoff run. You don't want to read a whole bunch into that, but Labushkin usually just drags down every single defense pair he plays. If all of a sudden that's a good defense pair, it just makes Dallas that much tougher defensively.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in Minnesota here. Top line is pushing 20K. And I just, like all the teams we've mentioned before, I'd rather play. I'll never say no to a Kaprizov one-off, but like this is just a tough matchup, back-to-back on the road. for a team that's basically 50% on the power play, going up against a team with a very good penalty kill and a good defense score. Like, you know, if they happen to get into your mix in 150 a little bit, that's fine. Dallas, I like, but the problem is I don't trust these lines as far as I can throw them. Like, generally, Hintz and Rantanen have been together. Generally, Johnston and Robertson have been together. Generally, Sagan and Duchesne have been together. The other winger in question gets rotated. So, like, I think if you're going to play Dallas here tonight, you can kind of do pairs or do some sort of power play stack. If I had to lean one, I think it'd be Johnston, Robertson, and then take off Bork and add Mikko Rantanen in, and then you're looking at really expensive. And it's not like the minutes are there, right? I know they play Rantanen on both power play units, but he still only plays like 18 minutes. So, like, for me, it would be Johnson, Robertson, and if you want to leave in Bork, that's fine. I would probably look to add in someone else. It's the pairs that I like. I don't trust the third wheels because they've been searching for combos all season. They're like one forward short of being able to run two competent lines. So it would be the pairs. I lean Johnston, Robertson. I think I would figure out a way to power play stack.
Yeah, you mentioned the line combos. I see GA007 saying the Dallas lines are a mirage. They've only played 2 games, but they have one line that's played more than 8 minutes together in those 2 games, and it's Rantanen, Hintz, Robertson, which is not a line that has started either of the games. That's just something that they've gone to frequently during the games. Like Sam Steele gets booted off, you know, Colin Blackwell gets yeeted to Narnia. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, they have like 6 forwards worth playing. Anybody else, like, maybe like those guys are going to donk a goal every once in a while, but you cannot rely on the line combinations. Like you said, the best you can do is rely on Hintz, Rantanen as a duo, or Duchesne, Sagan as a duo, or something like that. If you want a power play stack, Dallas, I think you can do that. Like, you know, Minnesota, their Achilles heel over the last few years has typically been the special teams. Penalty kill in particular has not been very good. Now, the penalty kill this year has been good, but it's been the goaltending. Down a man so far this year, the Wild have a .929 save percentage on the PK. They're not going to hold on to a .929 PK save percentage. So if you want to just stack the Dallas power play guys, like 3 of them or, you know, 2 of them, I think that's kind of the way I would go about it. It is tough to stack Dallas just because they, you know, the cheap third wheels just rotate so much. You can't rely on any of them. So I think I would just 2-man stack or just full on power play stack. Like, I just don't think you can rely on the rest of the guys. I'm not super stoked on Dallas here tonight. And also the same with Minnesota. Like, a big problem for me is Minnesota is 19,800. Now they're only coming in with 2% ownership. But like the Vegas top line that we just talked about, which also only has 2 of the 3 guys on the top power play unit, is $1,100 cheaper. Also coming in, they're at 2.9% ownership, and they're playing a worse team. So, and they're rested. So, like, I do think there are just other spots that I would rather go to. Like, I will say, like, in general, I don't have a ton of interest in the forwards in this game. If any side, it would be Dallas, but it would be 2-man stacks there. I'm not even strength stacking their lines. You just cannot rely on them.
Yeah. Let's get to these late night festivals of fuckery. It never fails. Never fails that 100K first GPP, absolute gong show games at the end of the slate. That's what happens when you have clown shows out in California. Carolina Hurricanes, 3.9 total. Heading into San Jose, the Tiburones have a 2.5 total. Carolina going Jarvis, Aho, Ehlers, Svechnikov, Stankov, and Blake. You know, I guess I'll mention Hall. He's been really, really good on that 4th line. Then Stahl, Martinook, Carrier. Sharks loading up the top line. Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund. Looks like Misa is going to be making his NHL debut in between Philip Kurashev and Ty Dellandrea. Welcome to the NHL, Michael Misa. The second line is Will Smith, Jeff Skinner, Alex Wenberg.
This guy, Kurashev, is so bad that he played a whole season next to Connor Bedard. Chicago was like, no thanks. He lasted 2 games next to Celebrini, and they're like, nah, you're going to play with Michael Misa? It's like...
Poor kid, man. The poor kid. Anyway, I'll start on the San Jose side. Now, if this was in Carolina, I would absolutely put no thought to the Sharks here. Now, I put some thought to the Sharks here and like generally came to the same result anyway, that like I don't really want to play them. But I will say Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund coming in at 2.6% projected ownership with no Kochetkov. They're going to avoid the Stahl line. Now, the Aho Jarvis Ehlers line, I feel like is going to be one of those lines that end up being good at both ends of the ice. But, you know, at 2.6% projected, I don't mind taking, like, if you're playing 20 lineups, a 1 of 20, something like that, 150 to have a couple or whatever. A fully correlated Macklin Celebrini line, even though they're 18-5, and I'd much rather just in that range go play Montreal's, go play, you know, Vegas, that kind of stuff. I don't think you should just completely wipe them off the board because they're playing Carolina. They're going to avoid the Stahl matchup. Their goaltending hasn't been elite, whatever. So I'd take a stab.
I mean, and don't forget Jacob Slavin's not playing.
Yeah.
So
he's
arguably the best defensive defenseman in the NHL. That does matter.
Yeah. So I don't mind taking a stab at that. In single entry, I don't know how I get there. But like if you happen to, I'm a little bit of a shark slappy. I'd be like, okay, but like you're crazy, but I'm also crazy, so it works out. But I don't really have a ton of interest in the depth of San Jose. Would be that top line in 20 to 150 max or bust. The Carolina side obviously is the biggest total. They have the biggest total on the slate at 3.9. The Sharks are a disgrace. They gave up 7 goals to the Ducks the other night with Askarov in net, by the way. The Sharks coach said he was impressed with Dickinson and he could be in line for a minutes upgrade. He only played 11:59, so whatever that means, it could be like 13:03. So, like, you just don't know. Obviously, Carolina won 19,600, 21.2% top 2 stacks, 16.1% projected ownership. And listen, I've been on them all season. It feels bad to get off them here. I feel like that ownership is going to be a bit more inflated than that, especially because, you know, pricing is still really soft and you can do a bunch of things with them. They're fully correlated. The Sharks penalty kills a disgrace to humanity. I do really, really, really like Carolina 1 here. It's just a matter of, you know, your build and if you can handle the ownership. Ownership doesn't matter to me. I can find ways to get different. But if you're someone who does, just be aware of what you're doing. I think Carolina 2 is certainly in play as well. Stankov and Blake. Svechnikov, I will plug it because Cliffy won't, because he's humble on his article this morning that he does through, it's still Substack, right? He had a nice thing on Jackson Blake, so go read it. It's free. I think it's on his Twitter profile where you can join. But yeah, Svechnikov, Stankov, and Blake at 14,400, only a little under 8% projected ownership, certainly in play. You know, Jarvis Aho Ehlers gets the lion's share of the minutes, but that's kind of caked into the price here. At 14,400, you don't need, 22 minutes. They're fine at 15, 16 minutes, whatever they've been getting. I do really like Carolina 2 here. You're like power play stacking the Oilers. Don't mind Stahl, Martinook, something like that, but it would be the top 6 of Carolina for me. San Jose 1, without Slavin in 20 to 150 max.
So, earlier in the show, we talked about how Montreal went into Chicago and Suzuki still got nearly 22 minutes of ice time. I went and looked last year when Carolina went into San Jose in the middle of March. The ice time leader was Seth Jarvis at 18:37. Sebastian Aho played 18:21. There's a couple guys around 17. Everybody else was under 17. Like, I do worry that this is a situation where Carolina just plays through its depth, and the top line plays 17 to 18 minutes. Maybe like the second and third lines play like 15 minutes, and then the third line plays like 12 or 13 or something like that. That's kind of the thing. This is a great matchup for Carolina one. Like that, the San Jose Sharks, like ever since they traded Jake Wallman, I mean, they were a defensive disgrace as it was, but things certainly haven't been getting better. As it is on the season, second most shot attempts against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Again, it's only a couple of games. You don't want to read like a whole bunch into that. One of those games was against Anaheim. The other one was against Vegas. So it's like two teams at opposite ends of the spectrum. And, if their average game is going to be a bottom 5 defensive effort, this is going to be a long season for the Sharks. I do think it is a great matchup for Carolina. I also wonder, like, at 19,600, we'll talk about Pittsburgh in a second. Like, Pittsburgh is right there with less ownership and virtually the same top 2 stack percentage. And then, Vegas is $1,000 cheaper. Montreal's over $1,000 cheaper. So, like, I do think there are options. I think this is honestly a game where I'm looking more towards the Carolina depth. And that second line is really sticking out to me. Stankoven, Blake. And Svechnikov, we brought up, you brought up Jackson Blake, like his shot volume and, so far on the power play, he's playing on the second power play unit is through the roof. He was good on the power, like he was power play 1 for this team for a long stretch last year as a rookie. And, Svechnikov's still on the top power play. We know that Stankoven likes to shoot the puck. That just seems like a team that is going to be firing a lot of pucks here tonight, or a line that is going to be firing a lot of pucks here tonight. And I don't wonder if they do get some extra ice time because they are playing a weak Sharks team. So, listen, I think Carolina basically has like 3 playable lines here tonight. For me, I just think there are other lines I'd rather go to as opposed to the Jarvis, Aho, Ehlers line. I have no issue with playing them. It is a great matchup for them. They've looked good so far to start the season. But for me, I just think that Carolina 2 is going to get a few extra minutes or a couple extra minutes. All 3 guys really like to shoot the puck. They're going to avoid, any sort of tough matchup. Like, they're going to be going up against Kurashev and Delandria and those guys. So, like, I think Svechnikov and Stankoven and Blake are in a great spot here tonight. They're a little bit more expensive than a filler, which kind of sucks at 14,400. But I've watched a couple Carolina games. They've looked really, really, really good. So I really do like Carolina 2 here. San Jose 1 is interesting to me. Here's the thing. We talked about it a lot last year. San Jose was basically 2 different teams, one with Jake Wallman on the ice, one with Jake Wallman off the ice. And they haven't really proven to me yet that they can be a good offensive team without Jake Wallman. Like, I don't think Dmitry Orlov and John Klingberg and Nick Leddy and these guys, they're not Wallman, like not at this stage of their careers. And I'm not completely sold on San Jose. Like at 18,500, like they're priced, in that Vegas range with Vegas. They're priced in that range with Montreal. They're priced in that range. Minnesota's $1,000 more expensive. Like, I just think that there are other spots that if you want to get a 2 or 3% line that don't have atrocious defensemen behind them at similarly low ownership. So honestly, I think I'm out on San Jose here tonight. For me, like I said, Carolina has 3 playable lines, but I think I'd rather go with the Stankoven line here just because I do think they pick up a couple extra minutes and they've looked great to start the season.
Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3 total heading into Anaheim. That arguably really sucks. The Ducks have a 3.4 total. Pittsburgh going Crosby, Rust, Raquel, Malkin, Mantha, Brazeau, apparently the new Wayne Gretzky, Novak, Tomasino, Kindell. Anaheim going McTavish, Gauthier, Seneke, Vetrano, Terry, Granlund, Kreider, Carlson, Killorn. I will start on the Anaheim side. The team the line with the most ownership On this slate projected, Mason McTavish, Cutter Gauthier, Bennett Saneke at 23%. It makes sense from this standpoint. The price hasn't moved and they've been playing a ton of minutes, and they're 13,900. You know what I mean? That's just a bad mispricing by DraftKings. They're fully correlated on the Olin Zellweger unit. I don't really put much faith in the Ducks power play, but they have been very, very good at 5-on-5. And it's not like Pittsburgh is good defensively. They play at the best of times some pond hockey, that Crosby, Rust, Raquel line. So, you know, I do get it from that sense. They've looked excellent in 2 games. You want to go back to them. We know Frostback is chomping at the bit to play 31 Ducks in his lineup here tonight. That, you know, ownership agnostic, McTavish, Gauthier, Saneke would be the line for me. You put ownership into the equation. I'm looking at Carlson, Kreider, Killorn. I wish it was Troy Terry, but, you know, Cliff and I were kind of talking about this before the show, and he was basically convincing me that it could be way worse than Killorn, and it definitely could. And they're coming in with under 0.5% projected ownership. Like Carlson and Kreider, I think they've played 18, 19 minutes. The minutes are there. This Pittsburgh team isn't good defensively. They have goaltending issues. The blue line isn't great. You know, like obviously the easier click is going to be McTavish, Gauthier, Saneke. From an ownership perspective, if I'm playing Ducks here tonight, I think I'm going to Carlson, Kreider, Killorn. Granlund, Vetrano, Terry just feels like an assortment of guys that don't really mesh together. So I'd rather save the $600 and go to Carlson, Kreider, Killorn. Again, you want to go to McTavish, Gauthier, Saneke, that's fine. Just expect a ton of ownership. On the Pittsburgh side, honestly, if you include everything, ownership, price, I think my favorite line in this game is honestly Pittsburgh 1. Let's not forget that the Ducks, with Lucas Dostal on that, gave up 6 goals to the Sharks the other day. And Pittsburgh 1 has been great together for years. I maybe pump the brakes on great, but you know, offensively, they've been very, very good. Crosby still has it offensively. They're fully correlated. The Ducks penalty kill is atrocious. 19,300, 18.3% top 2 stack, 11.2% projected ownership. You have decent positive leverage there. There's no matchup that really concerns me. Their penalty kill isn't great. Jacob Trouba's on the Ducks. So, like, I do really, really like Pitt 1 here. You want to go to Pitt 2 because Justin Brazeau is the next coming of Jesus Christ? Like, fine. They've actually been really good to start the season. Again, very, very small sample. Brazeau is what he is, like, and he is what he's not. That doesn't make any sense, but, like, when you figure it out, like, I think he's a solid enough player to hang with Mantha and Malkin. They're coming in with under 1% projected ownership, 13,300. I don't mind it, but really, honestly, I think Pitt 1's my favorite line in this game. Obviously, I like the McTavish line the best on the Ducks, but if you include ownership, I'd rather go to Carlson, Kreider.
Yeah, on the Pittsburgh side, they definitely do have 2 lines in play. It depends what you want to do with the rest of your lineup. You know, Pitt won last year, 3.3 goals per 60 at 5-on-5, 3 expected goals per 60. These guys play 20 minutes plus top power play time. So, you know, they get the ice time. They're good at 5-on-5. The power play was good last year. Honestly, I think we kind of forget that about the Penguins. The power play was actually pretty good. Whether that continues this year, I guess we're going to find out. But, you know, the Ducks typically take a lot of penalties. They took a lot of penalties last year. Hasn't been anywhere near as bad this year. So, you know, we'll see what happens. But again, it's only been a couple games for the Ducks. And also it was against San Jose and Seattle. So it's not like they're playing the top of the league. But yeah, I really do like Pittsburgh 1 here. They're one of those lines, like if you're paying, you know, playing in that 18 to 20K range, like between them, between Vegas, between Montreal, I do think there are a few lines up in that price range that are targets of mine. they do make a nice pivot away from Carolina. Like, because if that Carolina top line, they're projected at 17%. If they come in at like 20%, Pittsburgh one might be half that. You know what I mean? So I like, if you want to get away from what should be pretty high ownership on Carolina one, I do think Pittsburgh one as a pivot makes a lot of sense. On the Anaheim side, like a 24% ownership, it's just killing me. Like, I honestly think that's just way too high. If this were like a 4-game slate, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I can probably eat that. On an 8-game slate, like, honestly, I would probably just go play like that Carolina second line that we just talked about. For me, it's not that I think they're going to be a bad line or that they played poorly or that it's a bad matchup or any of those things. It's just when I see 24% ownership on a line that's only played 2 games against 2 what should be pretty bad teams, like, I don't want to read too much into it. So at 24%, like, I agree with you. I think I'd rather go elsewhere. Kreider, Karlsson, Killorn makes a lot of sense. I think Alex Killorn's kind of an underrated player. He's definitely a little bit of an older player now. The guy had 19 goals last year. Like, he's not nothing. Karlsson, I think, already has 3 points in 2 games. Chris Kreider had a 2-goal night the other night. So, that has been a pretty good line at 15,300. It is a little bit steep. The thing is like, you can go play Nashville 1, Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Kemmel. If Kemmel plays there for basically the same price, you can play the Hurdle, Saad, Fave line from Vegas for basically the same price. So, like, there are other options, but for me, it'd be Kreider, Karlsson, Killorn. But I also think, Pitt 1 is definitely my favorite line in this game. And I think they do make a nice pivot away from Carolina.
Yes. Let's talk about defensemen here. Top of the board, there is no one above 7K, but 6K and up. We have Yossi, Bouchard, Fox, Weegar, Dobson. I think, Bouchard and Yossi are obviously the best plays on the slate. Or the best defensive plays in the top range. Excuse me. You want to play Fox. Again, Fox is one of those guys who needs to hit the score sheet. He's not a huge peripheral guy. I think Yossi is in a really good spot here. Yossi would be one for me. I'm not huge on spending up all the way here. I think the mid-range is more where I live. But if I was spending up, it'd be Yossi. What are you seeing?
Yeah, top of the board for defenseman tonight is Bouchard with Yossi just behind him. Bouchard a little bit of a better point per dollar value. I do think those are the 2 top defensemen of the expensive defensemen. I would probably prefer Bouchard. But I think both are very much fine. But I kind of agree with you that I do like the mid-price range a little bit here tonight. Like, with Jake Wallman still not playing, Darnell Nurse is basically the number 2 defenseman at even strength for Edmonton. So I think Nurse is fine. Jackson Lacombe's under 5K. He had 27 minutes the other night in that San Jose game. Like, they're playing him a ton. I don't want to say he's in the Zach Werenski role yet, where he plays like 25 minutes and then everybody else is at 20 or less, but it's getting close to that point. So I do like Lacombe. John Carlson, certainly for Washington. Thomas Harley, I don't like that he's not getting top power play time, but he's still getting solid minutes, so I don't mind Harley. Brandon Montour from Seattle, he's a guy that can both shoot and block shots, jumps into the play a lot. So, like, there's a lot in that, like, 4 to 6K range, I think, to like. It's also a lot under 4K to like here tonight. Like, without Jacob Slavin, I think Keandre Miller and Sean Walker both make a ton of sense from Carolina, given the matchup. Radko Gudas, he's only getting 19 to 20 minutes, but he's made a pretty good pairing with Jackson Lacombe. Adam Larson from Seattle, he's a guy that can put up block shots. I don't mind him. With Noah Hannafin, I think Braden McNabb from Vegas also makes a lot of sense. Jake McCabe, I think he's still leading Toronto in ice time per game amongst their defensemen. Not huge on Toronto defensemen, generally speaking, but he's cheap enough where it's fine. Same thing with Brandon Tanev because he's under 3K. Mike Riley's in the lineup for Carolina here tonight. He's under 3K. I don't know how many minutes he's going to play, but he's a good puck-moving defenseman. So, like, if you can get like an assist with a couple shots from him, I think that's fine. So I do think like Tanev and Riley under 3K do make sense on this slate.
Before we go to goalies, got a couple things. Saw some people in the chat clamoring for Jake. If you want to go follow Jake, he is on Tails. He does give out plays betting wise. He also, I think there is some DFS stuff on there as well. So going at Jake Hari, you can figure out in his profile how to follow him on Tails. Also, once again, the 30% off deal ends tonight. So click that link in the description, or click the link in the chat, use promo code CUP. That expires tonight. That'll get you 30% off a monthly package. Let's talk about goalies here. Top of the board, it's looking like Jake Ottinger, Freddie Anderson, the Vegas goalie, probably going to be Hill, not confirmed yet. Lucas Dostal, Caden Primo at 8K. Listen, goalies are random creatures. I'm not advocating to go play Caden Primo, but I can tell you he's going to have no ownership here tonight. I think if I'm spending up here, it would be for either Jake Ottinger or Aiden Hill. I don't particularly love spending up for goalie, but those are the guys for me. In the mid-range, I think Montembeault makes some sense. Joey Decord, both goalies in that game make some sense. I know Vasilevsky has burned a lot of guys, but I think going back to him at 7,600 is fine. Igor Shesterkin at home, 7,500. He can steal a game. This is one of those games, if the Rangers win, he's going to have to save a lot of pucks, or Skinner lets in a lot of silly ones, which are both possible. If I'm spending down, oh, man, Nedeljkovic just got confirmed for the Sharks, by the way. Yikes. If I'm spending down, though, I think Dustin Wolf or Philip Gustafsson's fine. Neither inspire some confidence, but they are cheap enough where, if they get the win, they'll be fine.
Yeah. Top of the board is Jake Ottinger. He's 8,400, but you get Minnesota on the back-to-back. Minnesota's typically struggled at 5-on-5 over the years. Whether it's going to be true this season, I guess we'll find out. But I do think Ottinger is perfectly fine. I also like Lucas Dostal at 8,100 going up against Pittsburgh. I'm still not sold on the Ducks being a good defensive team. So Dostal's kind of like, he's more of like a volume type play here tonight. And we haven't projected for the third most saves on Stokastic here. So I don't mind Dostal. For a little bit cheaper, I'll mention Joey Decord. Listen, this guy is really, really good. Seattle's not going to win a ton of games, 6-5. So the games they do win, it's probably going to be because of Decord. We said that on Saturday's show as well. So, if Seattle pulls out a win against Montreal here tonight, it's like a 4-2 win and Joey Decord plays pretty well. So don't mind Decord for cheap. Also don't mind Dustin Wolf. Going up against Vegas isn't great, but at 7,200, it's hard. At 7,200 in a home matchup, it's kind of hard to complain about that. So the cheap guys for me are probably Decord and Wolf.
Yep. We will be back tomorrow. I believe it's a 4-game slate. But who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Going to the game we talked about at the very end, I'm going to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm going to Rickard Rakell.
Big Dick Rick can never go wrong. Sticking with an expensive guy. It is Tuesday. We like Philip Forsberg. I'm going Philip Forsberg.
Philip Forsberg it is.
Yep. I am free rolling on the hat trick picks, though, because I got lucky and hit Dorofeyev. That was the first hat trick pick I've hit since the Cold War, but it's fine. We will be back tomorrow, 4-game slate. If you're in the spin or any contest, really good luck, but not often do you get a chance to win 100K in NHL DFS. So if you're in there, best of luck. Hopefully we're talking about someone we know winning that tomorrow, and we'll see you at 1:30.
Good luck tonight, everyone.